What now, bitches?
Hello friends.
It's
A
coming
lot
down.
has happened in recent days, including today. That's why we divided the video into topics. Let's start with news of the war. The military of the 127th Regiment of the occupying forces rebelled because of poor security. The personnel were even left without water. Refuseniks were taken out of their positions. Their further fate is unknown and not particularly interesting. The IAEA mission left the Zaporozhye NPP. 2 observers remained at the station, who will continue to monitor the situation. The IAEA published a report on the results of the mission to the Zaporozhye NPP. The report said that there is an urgent need for interim measures to prevent a nuclear accident caused by physical damage caused by military means. It is also argued that a protective zone around the plant should be created to avoid damage, and shelling of the surrounding area should be stopped to maintain the physical integrity of the nuclear power plant. The Hill writes that the Biden administration is no longer afraid that military assistance to Ukraine will provoke Russia, so the United States began to provide Kyiv with weapons that could cause very serious harm to Russian troops. Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine Zaluzhny admitted that the explosions at the Sake airfield in the occupied Crimea occurred precisely after the strike of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Ukraine received Harpoon missiles on a car platform from the west, the Pentagon said. Harpoon is an American anti-ship cruise missile, one of the most widespread in the world. A command and staff exercise has begun in Belarus, during which the Republic of Belarus and the Russian Federation will probably work out the seizure of part of the territory of Ukraine, the media write. We are talking about the border regions of the Volyn, Rivne and Zhytomyr regions. This was previously stated by the representative of the General Staff Gromov. Armed forces of Ukraine broke through the defensive formations of the 20th Motor Rifle Division of the RF Armed Forces near Posad Pokrovsky, 30 kilometers from Kherson. Today the last line connecting the ZNPP node with the energy system of Ukraine was disconnected. Energodom writes about this. As a result, the 6th power unit was unloaded and disconnected from the network, which now feeds its own needs at ZNPP. Rashists destroyed an apartment building in the center of Kharkiv with a rocket attack. The head of the Kharkiv Regional State Administration Oleg Sinagubov published new photos of damage in Kharkiv. Another rocket hit the courtyard of the administrative building. Nobody was hurt there.
Ссылка готова. Можем отправлять. Как принял прием.
Принял тебя, принял. Отправляй. Мы тоже отправляем. Пацаны, вам ту форму там выдали?
Explosions are reported in Kherson near the Daryevsky Bridge. Soldiers of the Alpha Special Forces showed several shots of how they cleared Vysokopolye of the Kherson region from Russian terrorists. On this map you can see which territories are liberated. In addition to Vysokopol in the Kherson region, the armed forces also liberated the neighboring village of Olhino and 3 more settlements. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reports about the liberation of the settlements of Novoznesensky, Kherson direction, and Dovgenki, Izium direction. Servicemen of the 128th Brigade raised the Ukrainian flag in the village of Novovoznesensko, Kherson region. The front line is now passing in the Balaklia area. The Institute for the Study of War (ISW) has updated the map of hostilities. According to sources used by ISW, the UAF took the village of Verbovka, adjacent to Balaklia from the northwest, as well as the southwestern region of Balaklia itself. Armed forces of Ukraine showed how they entered Verbovka, Kharkiv direction. The armed forces of Ukraine liberated the village of Bayrak in the Kharkiv region. Warriors of the Battalion of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Wild Field, removed the red banner of the paratroopers of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation over the village. As a result of the counteroffensive in the Kharkiv region, Ukraine managed to return 400 square kilometers under its control, ISW. It is reported that the village of Ivanovka in the Kharkiv region is under the control of the armed forces of Ukraine. In the course of conducting active operations in the Kharkiv direction, more than 20 settlements were liberated. The armed forces of Ukraine penetrated the enemy defenses to a depth of 50 kilometers. Filtration operations continue in a number of settlements. The invaders felt bad in Shevchenko. The village of Borshevka was liberated. It is known about the installation of the flag of Ukraine on the tower near the village Yasenovate, Kharkiv region. 26 kilometers from Izium to the north. So the armed forces have already gone much further. Biden opposed the recognition of the Russian Federation as a state sponsor of terrorism, Reuters. Liz Truss has been elected as the new British Prime Minister. She promised to ensure Putin's defeat in front of Ukraine if she wins the elections. Russian Federation buys millions of shells and short-range missiles from North Korea, The New York Times, citing U.S. intelligence. Seeking help from rogue states indicates Moscow's desperation, U.S. officials say. The European Commission approved the decision to suspend the simplified visa regime with the Russian Federation, President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen. Hungary asked to lift EU sanctions from three of Putin's wallets, Alisher Usmanov, Petr Avayan and Viktor Rashnikov. Politico, citing sources, reports that in return, Budapest promised not to block the extension of EU sanctions against Russia. From September 19, Russians will be denied entry to Estonia, Foreign Ministry Ermas Reinsalu. The head of the Foreign Ministry stressed that other countries of the Baltic region would do the same, and that the entry ban also applies to Schengen visas issued by third countries. Poland needs to prepare for a war with Russia in the next 3 to 10 years, said Marcin Osepa, Deputy Defense Minister of the country. There is a serious risk of war with Russia, which we will face in the next 3 to 10 years. We must use this time to rearm the Polish army as much as possible. Erdogan said that the West is supplying Ukraine with scrap metal instead of weapons. I openly declare the fallacy of the West's position. Because there are actions of the West based on provoking the parties. They declare military support. However, in reality, the West sends stale weapons and scrap metal to Ukraine, the Turkish president said. The Pentagon will announce a new $675 million military package for Ukraine today, The Washington Post. According to The Washington Post, it will include new missiles for HIMARS, as well as military vehicles. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Ukraine on a previously unannounced visit, AFP. The Biden administration will provide $2 billion in long-term foreign military funding to Ukraine and 18 of its neighbors, including NATO members and development partners. According to the U.S. State Department, this aid is in addition to $675 million in direct support for arms supplies to Ukraine. Deputies from St. Petersburg are demanding that the State Duma of the Russian Federation bring charges of treason against Putin and remove him from the presidency. They say that the war that the bunker started led to the death of Russian soldiers, the collapse of the Russian economy and the increase in the border with NATO by 2 times. "You have to live for something you can die for," is the advertising slogan of the contract service of the armed forces of the Russian Federation from a public. Russia started early with a fake about the destruction of military equipment from the West. The propagandists reported that they allegedly destroyed the M2 Bradley infantry fighting vehicle and Leopard 2A4 tanks in the south of Ukraine, but this heavy equipment is not yet in service with the armed forces of Ukraine. Nothing unusual. The invaders again stole a washing machine from Ukrainians. She was found in positions from which the Russians fled. RF has not lost anything and will not lose anything, and will also move forward, rejecting everything unnecessary. Russia has not yet begun military operations, but is only trying to finish. Putin said that to help the residents of the so-called DPR and LPR are the dead of the Russian Federation, and the country began hostilities as a nearer response to the enemy's actions, by armed means. Putin is unhappy with the fact that grain from Ukraine went to the European Union, and not to the poorest countries. Putin does not agree that Japan is the country of the rising sun. In his opinion, the sun first rises over the Russian Reich, and then over all the rest. Terrorist country blackmails EU with coal. Gazprom published a video titled, "And the Winter Will Be Big." In the video, the company breaks the gas and shows how the ice age comes. In Kabul, Afghanistan, a suicide bomber exploded near the gates of the Russian embassy. Exploding head. According to preliminary data, the man blew himself up while in line for visas, when the diplomat came out to announce the lists. It is reported that 20 people died in the attack. The explosion in Kabul killed at least 25 people. Of these, 2 employees of the diplomatic mission of the Russian Federation. In Yalta, a Russian military man, together with his friend, stabbed a man, loaded him into a car with a Z symbol and took him out. He died. The occupation police released one of the killers. Now people are protesting there. Russian justice in all its glory. Queen Elizabeth II has passed away, Buckingham Palace says. She was 96 years old. She ruled Great Britain for 70 years. The British flag is flown at half-mast at Buckingham Palace. The British throne legally passes to Prince Charles.
God save the King.
live in difficult times. Our children will learn about these events in schools. We write our history. In this video, ordinary Ukrainians meet the Ukrainian military, who freed them from occupation. This is just the beginning. Subscribe to the channel. There will be a lot of news. See you soon.